If you've ever taken a look at the Pirelli tyre graphics since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, you might have noticed something a bit odd. If you scroll your way down to the Aston Martin pair, you'll see that it shows that Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll don't have any new sets of tyres for the race. No, that's not a glitch. They've been racing on used tyres for most of this season. Now, in a sport that's renowned for being one of the most technologically advanced in the world, tyres are still an aspect of Formula One that's considered a little bit of a black art, and teams will often try odd tactics to gain the edge over their rivals. But we'll admit, on the face of it, this does seem like a bizarre tactic, especially given the performance advantage you'd normally associate with a new tyre over a used one. So what are the green team up to? Well, it's all got to do with temperatures. The tyre's construction, behaviour and the way they are handled has changed dramatically for 2022. The tyre's dimensions have changed in order to take into account the switch made by the sport from 13 to 18-inch wheel rims, with the sidewall of the tyre being reduced as a consequence. Given that the sidewall of the tyre is responsible for damping some of the forces imparted on the car, a larger percentage of those forces have had to be dealt with by the suspension, altering how both behave relative to one another. This also impacts the way the tyres perform from a temperature perspective, affecting both the surface and bulk temperatures of the tyre, all of which adds to the Goldilocks-like conundrum of the tyres never either being too hot or too cold, and the ongoing effect of their performance over time. One theory is, in scrubbing the tyres, it removes the outer film, which is then left to cool before being put back in the blankets, where a chemical reaction occurs in the rubber. This makes the tyre more heat resistant, which increases the durability of the rubber, and stabilises the compound. We saw this applied by Yamaha in MotoGP with great success at the 2020 race in Jerez. But obviously, the Michelins in MotoGP are very different from the Pirellis used in Formula One, and Pirelli Motorsport boss, Mario Isola, said this process doesn't really make a difference to the compound used in F1, and doing so isn't very useful. Putting aside the physical changes though, it seems that the main reason behind Aston's approach is to do with how the tyres are prepared before being mounted to the car. Previously, dry weather tyres could have their temperatures controlled in the blankets, with the tyre tread and sidewall temperatures not exceeding 600 degrees C. Then, for a maximum of 3 hours for the front tyre and 5 hours for the rear tyres, their temperature could be between 60 and 800 degrees C. Finally, for a maximum of 2 hours, the front tyres could be heated between 80 to 1000 degrees C. This gave the engineers a myriad of heating options, both in terms of how hot the tyres were heated and in what intervals. This meant that the tyres could be prepared uniquely for the various circuits and conditions that the teams encounter throughout the season. But this year, we've had a simplification of the storage and heating of the tyres for 2022. And this is why we're seeing Aston Martin trying something a little different. This year, the tyres can only be heated prior to the session in which they are intended to be used. Not only that, the dry weather tyres are subject to a maximum heating cycle of 3 hours, whilst the tyre tread and sidewall temperatures can't exceed 700 degrees C. To work around that, Aston's trick of running a set of tyres during any of the 3 practice sessions, even if only for a single installation lap, allows them to put tyres through additional heat cycles. For example, if they were to prepare a set of hard or medium tyres in the blankets ahead of FP1, they'd have up to 3 hours in the blankets not exceeding 700 degrees C. They'd then go through a heat cycle on track, with the driver likely to keep them in a prescribed operating window. Then, ahead of the race, they can have another cycle through the blankets for 3 hours before being mounted on the car. Overall, that's 3 separate heating stints. However, they'd still be within the rules of only heating tyres before the required session. So nothing illegal going on here, officer. Of course, it's not the same as the old procedures, where the teams have much more freedom and could raise the temperature of the tyres in a more controlled fashion. But whether you class it as a workaround, a loophole, or whether you believe it's against the spirit of the regulations, Aston aren't breaking any rules. They do lose out on having 100% fresh rubber for the race itself, but they've clearly decided it's worth a punt to try and gain the upper hand within the new tyre regs. Looking at their current points haul, however, it may not be having the boosting effects Aston were hoping for, but the team clearly thinks it's worth the effort so far. And let's not forget that Aston's chief tyre performance engineer, Jan Matsuzaki, is known as the tyre whisperer in Formula One. Who knows, maybe it'll start to bear fruit around some of the upcoming, potentially colder tracks. Had you noticed this strange tactic from Aston Martin? Let us know in the comments below.